Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eston Augie TV. Your host, S here, and I am going to be bringing to you all of the things related to surviving the industry. I have been 100% consumed with all things surrounding Diddy and these young artists who are just like crashing out. And you know what? I figured I might as well bring you guys all of this news and help you get up to speed on what's going on within the industry, but also related to Diddy's case, because right now he's being indicted for sex trafficking, but the rabbit hole goes so much deeper than that. And we'll uncover all those things in this new series called Surviving the Industry. However, this first episode is just going to be about how Diddy became who he was and how he gained so much notoriety in the industry despite not really being known for any music. How did this man become a music mogul and not have any good music really, like apart from when Biggie died, you know? So that's what we're going to be doing a deep dive on today. How did Diddy get to where he did? Who backed him? Where did he learn all of these predatory practices? And putting all of the pieces together so that you can understand the bigger web of freaky ass ninjas in the industry, because it actually doesn't just stop with Diddy. It extends to music executives, many of the gatekeepers that are still present in the industry today. It's Before we dive in, I would like to first get us started off with I've been on the fence, dreaming, low down, dirty, scheming. Thank you for staying tuned. So, I will be going over some very good information, and my objective is to keep this video as short as possible so that you can just get the deets that you need to know and go about your business. But make sure you stay tuned for future episodes. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I have an entire presentation, video footage backing all. When I tell you I went back to college on this, I really did. I really did. So let's dive right into it. I have this amazing presentation. Surviving the Industry, Episode 1. Who created the monster Diddy? Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, and in latter years, Brother Love, was born November 4th, 1969 in Harlem, New York, to Janice Combs and Melvin Earl Combs. We'll deep dive into Frank Lucas, who was one of the major drug lords at the time, he had connections to him, but Diddy's father was kind of playing both sides of the fence, right? Like profiting from being an associate to the drug lord while simultaneously being a police informant to the untimely death of his father when Holmes was only 2 years old. This left his mother in absolute shock, might I tell you. She was in absolute shock and really just wanted to get her son out of the projects and create some semblance of normalcy for her son. So that is when his mother, who was a teacher's assistant and in some cases a model, would go to work and grind as hard as she can to get them out of the hood. She wanted to get her boy out of the hood as fast as she possibly could. And she succeeded in those efforts. She did successfully move Diddy, or Sean Combs at the time, to Mount Vernon, New York, which was a working class neighborhood that still had its challenges, but was a lot more quiet, had a lot less drug use, and a much safer environment for Sean Combs to grow up in. And that's exactly what he did. He went to school and graduated from Mount St. Michael Academy and actually went on to attend an HB industry. It was at Howard University that P. Diddy would begin these epic parties that eventually gained Andre Harrell's attention at the time. Enough so enough to the point where Andre Harrell was willing to bring Diddy on as an intern and serve as his mentor. Diddy, geeked at the time, had no idea what mentorship in the in the entertainment industry would look like, but he would soon learn all things. But before we dive into what that internship and mentorship looked like under Andre Harrell, let's talk about what Diddy's next steps were as he got his introduction to the industry. The first thing that he did was drop out of Howard University because, after all, he did have record label execs in his back pocket, right? Andre Harrell no longer saw the need to go to college. While this would not be his last time being on Howard's campus, it was his last time being on campus as a student. He ended up dropping out and focused on the entertainment industry full time and took his internship and his mentorship so serious. So serious, in fact, that he ended up moving in to Andre Harrell's apartment for a short period of time during this internship. Before we jump into what happened during that internship, let's talk a little bit about who Andre Harrell is and his background so we can start to identify some patterns. Andre Harrell met Diddy while he was still enrolled in college, and he's so enamored by youth that he offers him an internship. But in Andre Harrell's previous years, he had very close connections to Russell Simmons, who was the founder of Def Jam, which was a major record label who had like all of the artists signed from like back in the day, because it's a little bit more grown than me. But Andre Harrell and Russell Simmons were super, 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 super tight, right? So tight, in fact, that Andre Harrell climbed the ladder at Def Jam Records and very quickly became a VP at Def Jam Records, right? And there are some rumors spreading around that the reason for such a quick climb within Def Jam Records was because allegedly Andre Harrell and Russell Simmons were butt buddies. So they had this super sexual, intimate relationship, but they were also good friends and also loved music. So naturally, Andre Harrell soared through the ranks at Def Jam Records to the point where he started thinking to himself, I can do this myself. I actually don't need to be at Def Jam Records. I can start my own record label. One artist, and that was Heavy D. Now, at this particular point in time, the hip hop landscape was drastically changing by the second, right? So that old school vibe of hip hop was not so much in anymore, and R&B was really starting to pick up in popularity. So Andre Harrell not only enjoyed Diddy's company, but he really needed his youthful ears and his connection to the streets so he could get raw talent. So that is how Andre Harrell goes on the lookout for his next new intern. And he connects with Diddy. He meets Diddy at college, very likely hears about these epic parties that Diddy's throwing, offers him an internship, and says, you know what, move into my house. Allegedly, because Diddy, not only was he his intern and talent scout, but was his brand new butt buddy. Okay. And it's very likely to believe this because Andre Harrell himself, in a lot of different interviews, how Diddy kind of had him eating out the of his hands, like just kind of saying like, yeah, he had me in his back pocket. He said he needed a car to get to the studio, so I didn't, with no feedback, went out and bought him a car and things like that. He also confirms that Diddy did live with him. So that is not allegedly. Diddy did live with Andre Harrell at some point during this internship after dropping out of college, which to me is very sus. But while he was living with him, Harrell would frequently shower Diddy with gifts and creative freedom at his own label, which would eventually feed the problem of Diddy's ego getting way too large to manage. Diddy was good at what he did. He had his ears to the streets and he knew of raw talent. And very early into his internship, Sean Combs showed immense potential in his ability to not only know raw talent, but bring them in and nurture them into becoming stars, which he did with Mary J. Blige and Jodeci. And that's mainly what Uptown Records was known for. Those three stars, Jodeci, Mary J. Blige, and Heavy D. And that's actually what would gain Diddy some attention with even bigger music executives within the industry. But before we jump into that, let's talk about how his growing ego impacted his relationship with his mentor, Andre Harrell. Yeah. His ego was like growing, right? He was networking with larger executives, and essentially that was causing his head to blow up. And instead of just being the intern, he was feeling like I'm doing way more than intern related activities. I'm carrying this label on my back. Like, this is my label. Most of the artists that are trending, I brought here. Like the only reason that you're trending is because of me, you know? So, let's look at a video that confirms that Diddy was outgrowing his mentorship with Andre Harrell and would very likely justify his big ego. He got a big ego. So let's see. Don't worry, guys. I have this coming up right now. We're going to share the audio as well. Okay. So this is an interview with Puff Daddy, who, he's had several name changes over the years, but Puff Daddy at the time, also known as Diddy, with his mentor, Andre Harrell. I want you guys to watch this interview from the early 90s and you tell me who's boss here.
Jodeci tonight, Mary J. Blige, and Father MC. And all put together by, first this man in the middle here, and then he's passed it on to, I guess, his son, Proteégé. Proteégé. Yes, yes. Puffy. Yes. Tell me a little bit about this man and why you like working with him.
Because, he's not intimidated by youth, you know what I'm saying? He knows the importance of leaving a legacy behind. Because we need more adults out there that's going to teach the young, such as myself, and, basically leave a legacy behind, leave something behind.
And Andre, tell me a little bit about, if you didn't know that Andre Harrell over here in the middle, and people have been talking about you, I've been reading about you in the New York Times, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out here that hadn't heard of you before, but then saw that article in the Times and said, oh, okay, this young man's doing something. Because, this guy always asks me what's my age. So you want to know what everybody's doing, how old they are. Andre, what's happening? Tell me about the new ventures that are going on at MCA.
Well, what we did, we just made a vertically integrated deal, which means that we do film, television, and records.
Who did that laugh sound like? I bet you're thinking Sean Carter. We'll save that video for another day. However, did you notice in this interview, the interviewer didn't even really know who Andre Harrell was, much less what he was doing at his own record label? He was interviewing the intern. Like, at one point, he called the intern Andre Harrell. Awkward. So essentially, naturally, Diddy's ego outgrew his internship and he began feeling like, I need to be the boss and not the intern slash boy toy. And, I think that makes sense because I brought all this talent here. So Andre Harrell talks about how this ego is what would ultimately lead to him having to fire Diddy from Uptown Records. And even though he fired him, because that was still his boy, he still had him on his payroll, even though he wasn't working with Uptown Records. Okay. So I have a few allegedly comments that I would like you guys to just add to your back pocket because every episode in this series is going to build upon the next. Okay. So, allegedly, I can't say this is true, but there's a very strong possibility that everything that I'm saying is fact. But what I'm saying is legally, I have to say allegedly. Allegedly, Andre Harrell and Russell Simmons had a sexual relationship, which allowed for Andre to become a VP at Def Jam and solidify his name in the music industry, which would eventually lead to him starting his own record label, Uptown Records. Allegedly, Andre was not only impressed by P. Diddy's clout, but he was also very impressed by and therefore brought him on as his new boy toy. Andre Harrell, very good friends with Kim Porter, which ended up being Diddy's baby mother. So that is where they initially made that connection, which we'll talk about in another episode. Right now, we're just talking about how did the monster get created. Okay. Allegedly, the sexual nature of Andre and Diddy's relationship is what would lead Andre to keep Diddy on payroll even after being terminated. Andre is quoted like verbatim in an interview saying that he had to fire Diddy because he wanted to teach him a lesson, but in no way did he want to hurt him. He wanted him to learn his place because you're just a boy toy, you're not the record exec, right? Allegedly. So, last alleged statement is, did he learn how to move your boy toy? Like that whole move of let me move my boy toy into my home so that I could groom them easier. He learned that from Andre, which he would then turn around and do allegedly to Usher in the future. Okay. So Diddy's ego ridiculously big. Andre Harrell just was like, dude, I like you, which is why I'm getting you gifts. I'm buying you cars, but you're my boy toy, right? Like nothing more, nothing less. But what he didn't know was Diddy was already maximizing Andre Harrell's network. And therefore, there was no reason for him to pipe down. So let's listen to Andre Harrell on why he eventually had to terminate Sean Combs. T.
You discovered Mary J. Blige, you discovered Jodeci, you discovered Sean Combs, you
Notice
made him your A&R
he's
man.
taking credit for Diddy's work.
Which is fascinating because you kept this relationship and you worked with him
T.
But
for many years.
when I fired him, it was like I had an artist in the building, right? Because Puff, as an executive, he really was a very artistic guy. He can make videos, he
Yeah.
could style. So I started to branch out in the movies and the television. So then Puff wouldn't really listen to anybody but me. So my
I wonder
full-time
why.
job became managing Puff, and I was doing other things. So
Managing Puff.
even when I let Puff go, for the whole time he was let go, he was always on payroll. I never stopped paying him until he found his next spot. His artists were always still getting per diem. Because I didn't do it to hurt him, but I knew it was time for him to grow. And the only
Wow. Would you look at that? He was still on payroll until he got his next thing. What Andre Harrell tried to do was humble Diddy, right? But what it did was birth a monster because you had already given him access to your network. And that is where Diddy was born, from his partnership with Clive Davis. Clive Davis was linked to Arista record label, and he began gaining a major interest in Uptown Records between the time the late 1980s and early 1990s, which just so happens to be when Diddy was interning at Uptown Records. Okay. So Diddy eventually get introduces to Clive Davis, and he can sense the rising tension between him and Andre Harrell, and also has this desire to grow because these are all his artists keeping Uptown Records relevant, right? So he eventually maximizes his network, and lets Clive Davis know, like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Would you like to financially invest in Bad Boys? Okay. And this is how Diddy was appointed as one of the gatekeepers in hip hop, because Clive Davis had been a longtime music executive and had folks like Whitney Houston under his belt for so long. So he knew how the industry worked and how to work the industry to maximize profits, keep your artists poor but contractually obligated, and he taught all of that to Diddy. And he even put in his own book that he saw so much potential in Diddy that was more than just being in the music industry as an artist, but being in the industry as a brand in general. So these are the types of conversations that Clive Davis was having with Diddy, and the types of things that he was, doing to pipe Diddy's head up. And this is where the tea comes in. So, in order to solidify a deal like this, right, Diddy would have to do some questionable things for Clive Davis, because that apparently is the currency of. So, let's get into some more alleged. Cease his collaboration with Uptown Records altogether, which would lead to the eventual dissolution of Uptown as a whole. And Andre Harrell would move on from Uptown Records and move on to Motown. So, with that being said, it's very obvious here with the timeline that Clive Davis is Okay. So, my computer died, but basically where we left off was Clive Davis gained interest in Uptown Records only because he was interested in Diddy. And also around this time frame is when he started openly coming out as bisexual and saying that he, like after leaving his wife or him and his wife separated, he then began exploring relationships with men and realized that, like, hey, I can love a man. And that's exactly what happened. So that is the skinny on the two men that exploited Diddy in his early college days, right? We're talking 2 years into college, he gets introduced to the entertainment lifestyle, to the industry, and the industry exploits him sexually and makes all these promises. And that is literally the foundation of Diddy's game. So, with that being said, I would like to officially announce the founders, the creators of the monster that we now know as Diddy, as Andre Harrell and Clive Davis. Now, don't fret, we will do a deeper dive into the web of the industry, all of those that have been impacted, unlikely suspects, and more in future episodes. But what you can expect from the next episode is digging deep into the artists that Diddy signed once he got Bad Boy Records off the ground, the types of contracts they signed and how he would get them, looped in to his contract prison, and how he handled those that wanted out, because these crimes don't just stop at sex trafficking. They actually extend much farther than that, allegedly unaliving people. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay. Farewell, and thank you so much for tuning in to EATV. I am your amazing host, S, and tune in next time. I've been on the fence, dreaming, low down, dirty, scheming.